Well, hello to everyone tuning in. You are with Luminol on the Wall, or at least half of Luminol. Normally, my sister, Becky, would be here narrating a tragic story to all of you. And lately, I've been caring for my little baby. But today, that will change. Dun dun dun. Okay, I'm making it dramatic, but it's not really. But the truth of the matter is, Becky really has a piece of shit router, and it has failed about 5 times in the past year. And she's gotten a new one sent to her every time. And it fails every single time. So I am here while my husband puts our little baby to bed. And me, I'm going to be telling you guys about a very sad, senseless crime. Someone that decides to murder for their own personal curiosity. And yeah, I think it will shock you guys, and it really does leave a pretty big impact, especially when we hear the family of the victim speak at trial, which I will outline some of the details. So let's get into it. I will set the scene for y'all. All right, so it was Mother's Day 2021, and the Bailey family prepared for a quiet morning together. But by dawn, their whole world would unravel. 13-year-old Tristyn Bailey, a bubbly middle school cheerleader, was missing from her St. Johns County home. Within hours, what started as a search would end in absolute shock. Tristyn's body found brutally stabbed near a nearby retention pond, and a suspect nobody expected. Her 14-year-old friend and neighbor, Aiden Fucci. Over the next year, the tight-knit community and a courtroom would grapple with this unspeakable crime. And today, I'm going to walk you through every detail of Tristyn's story, who she was, how this violence unfolded, how investigators worked tirelessly to find answers, and what happened to Aiden Fucci in court. So to understand the tragedy, let's start by knowing who Tristyn was. Tristyn Bailey, as I said earlier, was 13 years old. She was the youngest of 5 siblings in the Bailey 7 family, 5 kids plus her parents. She was born in Singapore in 2008, but she'd really grown up in St. Johns County. Those who knew her remember a girl with an extremely bubbly spirit and a huge smile. She was a popular 7th grader at Patriot Oaks Academy and a talented athlete. Tristyn cheered on 2 teams, her middle school squad and an all-star gym team called Infinity All-Stars. Her cheer coach, Courtney Sparks, called Tristyn the most cheerful, most spirited, friendliest person, always rallying her team and uniting everyone. Another coach remembered Tristyn as extremely bubbly, the life of the party, someone who could lift everyone's mood during a tough practice. Her friends said she was kind, motivated, and always smiling. In fact, aqua blue was her favorite color. And after news of her disappearance broke, neighbors tied aqua ribbons to their mailboxes in her memory. Now, Tristyn didn't just have love for her cheer squads or her friends, she also loved her family, and she was devoted to her younger siblings. And as her mother Stacy said, she stood up for her friends, pouring a lot to so many. So in short, she was a beloved daughter, sister, student, and cheerleader, everything a parent would hope for their child. Now let's switch to the other side of the story. The suspect, Aiden Fucci. Now Aiden, he was a 14-year-old classmate of Tristyn's, living in the same Durban Crossing neighborhood just a few blocks away. And by all outward appearances, Fucci came from a stable, loving home. In sentencing, his grandmother, Deborah Spiewak, even described him as a silly, happy child who grew up in a happy home. Judge R. Lee Smith later noted that this case showed Fucci had a good, stable home environment because even his grandmother's unflinching apology on the stand indicated he was raised in a normal family. So he wasn't this loner or disturbed kid from at least outward appearances. But the truth of the matter is that maybe deep down he kind of was, because investigators uncovered some unsettling details in Aiden's life throughout the investigation. After Tristyn's death, detectives searched Aiden's room and found disturbing drawings and writings. News reports described violent drawings, including at least one gory sketch of a naked woman among his notebooks. And interviews revealed that weeks before the murder, Aiden allegedly told friends he was planning to kill someone and ominously described exactly how. And that was by taking them into the woods and stabbing them repeatedly. This chilling evidence that they found would later be quite central to the case. But on the evening of May 8th, 2021, a Saturday, none of what I just told you was public knowledge. Aiden and Tristyn were both just teenagers that night. And it was late when a mutual friend, 14-year-old Dolphus Abshire, had invited Tristyn over. According to the official timeline of that night, around 1:45 a.m. on Sunday, May 9th, a neighborhood surveillance camera captured a boy and girl walking together east on Saddlestone Drive. And investigators believed the boy was Aiden Fucci and that the girl was, in fact, Tristyn. They apparently left Dolphus's house after about 10 minutes at around 1:10 a.m. Tristyn was said to be excited that weekend. The day before had been a food truck meetup with friends, and she likely snuck out again that night to meet with them. It was a night young teens often sneak out, and the defense psychologist later argued they just thought they were going to be having fun, as Tristyn's mother, Stacy, had later noted. Now, this is where the story starts getting chilling, because that same camera caught just one person, believed to be Fucci, running alone in the opposite direction around 3:27 a.m. He was holding a pair of white Nike shoes in his hands. A second recording showed the girl missing. Tristyn's shoes were found abandoned on the road nearby. Investigators would later pinpoint this as the narrow window when the murder occurred. So Tristyn left the amenity center at 1:45 a.m. and around 3:30 a.m., Aiden is seen rushing back, shoes in hand. The next morning, May 9th, was Mother's Day. And as I had said earlier, the Bailey family was starting to celebrate at home, making breakfast, completely unaware of what had happened. Around 9 a.m., one of Tristyn's siblings went to wake her and discovered that her room was empty. Alarmed, the family searched the house and neighborhood. When they couldn't find her, her mother, Stacy, called 911 just after 9 a.m. At that point, a statewide missing child alert went out, and within an hour, searches by deputies and dozens of neighbors, moms and families walking the woodline, combed the Durbin Crossing area. By late morning, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement had activated a missing child alert for Tristyn, and the whole community at this point was completely on edge. Hours of frantic searching yielded nothing until that evening. At about 6:06 p.m. on May 9th, a resident walking near a quiet retention pond at the end of Saddlestone Drive stumbled upon something horrifying. It was the lifeless body of Tristyn Bailey in a wooded cul-de-sac just a short distance from her home. Now, get this. She had been stabbed 114 times, a number that was so extreme investigators noted that it was really beyond comprehension. Sheriff Robert Hardwick later announced the grim news to the press on Monday morning, May 10th. "We have a suspect arrested and unfortunately a 13-year-old girl dead," he had said soberly. Now, I think Becky and I often talk about this, but when someone is stabbed that many times, you often think of rage, like that person was really angry, right? But in this case, what is so horrifying about it is that I don't think rage was the factor in why this occurred. I mean, we have talked about so far that Aiden drew pictures of, naked women in a gory fashion. And he had said that he just kind of wanted to murder somebody to his friends. So I don't think that this is rage per se, because I don't think Tristyn did anything to upset him. I think this was pure curiosity and, quite frankly, enjoyment, which is rather disgusting. Now, at this point, there's a dead 13-year-old girl, and the quiet suburban streets around Durbin Crossing were flooded with law enforcement and news crews. Sheriff Hardwick held a Monday press conference confirming that Tristyn's body had been found near that pond and announcing an arrest. Aiden Fucci, 14, was taken into custody overnight and charged with second-degree murder, he said. Investigators were clear. No other suspects were involved. Fucci was the only suspect they had at that time. He commended the community's role in searching and finding Tristyn's body. And he said, "We saw moms and families out walking the wood line. This case was solved because a gentleman saw the information put out there and went to work." Which I have to say is, I think, what we all would want from the community that we live in, right? I think in moments like these, when people stay silent and people kind of ignore the tragedy, well, I'm sure the victims' families probably would feel very isolated. And I'm just happy to know that in Durban, that wasn't the case, because it ultimately led to them finding Tristyn and gives investigators a leg up on the case. Now, in this press conference, Hardwick also asked for respect for the grieving family. He said, "This is a grieving community and we're going to respect that grieving community." Hardwick even urged people to ignore social media rumors, as disturbing as it is, and to let medical examiners do their job. He added quietly, "I'm more worried about Tris and her family." The sheriff's office released a statement begging everyone to support the Baileys and let them grieve together. While the community mourned, detectives were sifting through evidence. And at Aiden Fucci's home, just 0.3 miles from where Tristyn's body was found, deputies found damning clues. Surveillance footage matched with witness interviews from friends like Dofus Absher led them to Fucci's door. Inside, officers discovered Fucci's clothes stained with blood matching Tristyn's DNA, and dark stains and a bloody rag in the bathroom sink. In the nearby pond, divers retrieved the murder weapon, a buck bread knife whose tip was broken. And where was the missing tip, you might wonder? Well, it was later recovered from Tristyn's scalp during her autopsy. And one other detail added to the horror. Fucci's blue jeans were also stained with Tristyn's blood, and they had been recently washed. Surveillance video from Fucci's home showed his mother, Crystal Smith, doing laundry early on May 9th. She took those jeans, soaked them, then brought them back upstairs to her son's room. Investigators noted that the sink strain tested positive for blood too, suggesting that she simply washed away evidence. Now, this little detail about Aiden's mother, guys, I mean, it's really easy to go to the most negative idea here, and that is that she suspected Aiden was part of something very horrific, or at least suspected that he had done something horrific based on the blood found on his jeans. And that's why she washed them so early Monday morning on Mother's Day. And maybe she was a little bit complicit in his crime. Maybe he told her. And while that is probably weighing on all of our minds right now, and we are truly wondering if that was the case, I think it's hard to really assume that. I mean, it could just be part of her morning routine. Maybe Aiden had said he fell, something to the like, and maybe she was totally oblivious to the reality of the situation. But needless to say, I will have to say it is a little bit sketchy, to say the least. But I'm not going to assume the worst of Aiden's mother just because of what Aiden did and her actions. But I think I'd be remiss not to mention that that is a possibility. Now, another component of the investigation was the forensic examination of Tristyn's injuries. And this forensic examination of her injuries revealed the brutality of the attack. Of the 114 stab wounds, at least 49 were on Tristyn's hands, arms, and head, which is clear signals that she tried to shield herself from being stabbed. As State Attorney R.J. Lariza noted at a news conference, at least 49 stabs were to Bailey's hands, arms, head, and were defensive in nature. He paused after saying that, adding under his breath, "To say it was horrific could arguably be made as an understatement." The sheer number of wounds led prosecutors to argue the crime was premeditated, as Larissa put it. One could certainly infer premeditation from the sheer number of stab wounds. Larissa said investigators had also gathered witnesses who said Fucci told them that he intended to kill someone and that he indicated to several witnesses that he was going to kill someone by taking them in the woods and stabbing them. Before May 9th, according to the arrest affidavit, Fucci had been seen telling at least one person that he had a knife and planned a killing. The prosecutor noted he was going to kill someone, which are certainly the facts of this case. All of this made State Attorney Larissa decide it was not only appropriate to charge the defendant as an adult, but it was really the only choice that we can make. He said, "It's a sad decision, but it was clear to us after we looked at what happened." By May 27th, 2021, a grand jury formally indicted Aiden Fucci on first-degree murder charges. Though he had initially been booked on a lesser second-degree charge, Larissa immediately upgraded it to premeditated first-degree murder. He announced that Fucci, 14, would be tried as an adult, saying, "We might not be able to stop these brutal and vicious murders, but we ought to at least try." Larissa added a warning to parents. You need to know what your kids are doing and what they are saying. I definitely think it's sad hearing him say that because it's true. I think often when kids are like 13 and 14, it's kind of the age when they really start to share details of their life with parents. They're more focused on their peers in general to form their identity, and they're going through a lot of changes. So I think they more so rely on their friends to kind of go through that than their parents. So I think as a parent, it's even more important at this stage to, build trust and to realize what your kids are going through or what they're thinking about. Because who knows, maybe if Aiden's mom had known what his dark thoughts were, maybe she could have gotten him help before he took it way too far. And ultimately, I know you don't necessarily need my opinion, but I just feel like I have to state that I do feel Fucci, even at 14, should be tried as an adult because he shows the propensity to be curious about murder, and not just the propensity. I guess that's not even the right word. He followed through. So is this a psychopath that could potentially turn into a serial killer later in life if unchecked? Even if he has a stint in juvie or what have you, potentially, right? So I think for the safety of those around him, I tend to agree with that decision. Now, in the aftermath of all of this, Tristyn's family issued a statement thanking law enforcement for their thorough and comprehensive investigation and praising a tremendous community outpouring of support. The family did say that seeing the details revealed was heart-wrenching, but the public's caring, from hosting vigils, fundraisers, to displaying her favorite aqua color, was a beacon of light in the darkness, and they vowed to keep Tristyn's memory alive. Now, in the months that followed, the community continued to honor Tristyn. Students wore white at school in her memory, and a Tristyn Bailey Strong Foundation was formed to support causes that she cared about. Neighbors' memorials remained at the site where her body was found. The Bella sisters, a duo who knew her, even wrote and performed a tribute song, "All I Wanted Was You, Tristyn," which captured the heartbreak their community felt. Now, as the case moved forward towards trial, 1 year had passed. Fucci remained in juvenile detention. He was then later transferred to a youth correctional facility while he was awaiting the proceedings. On February 6, 2023, on the eve of jury selection, Aiden Fucci pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. He admitted in court that he had stabbed Tristyn 114 times in the woods on Mother's Day of 2021. His defense attorneys and the state agreed to forego a lengthy trial. So basically, Fuchi's admission spared the family from reliving graphic testimony, which I think is ultimately a good thing because the details of this case were rather horrifying. I mean, Tristyn was only 13 years old. That is her family's baby, you know? I would not want to have to hear and go through testimony and have to hear it all again. That would just be heart-wrenching. So at the point of this trial, Fuchi is now 16 years old, and he faced life in prison. But because he was a minor, he was ineligible for the death penalty. Now, after his guilty plea, the only remaining step was a sentencing hearing. And the hearing took place over 2 days in March 2023 in St. Augustine before Judge R. Lee Smith. No jury was involved per Florida law for juveniles. Now, what transpired in that courtroom was gut-wrenching. And it's actually where I got this case from because I did see a TikTok video of it. And her family truly did make an impact. So on day 1, which happened on March 22nd, the medical examiner described the wounds in detail, and then Tristyn's family delivered powerful victim impact statements. Her oldest sister, Alexis, began by holding up an empty jar on the witness stand and dropped 114 heart-shaped stones into it. One for each of the 114 stab wounds my sister had to endure, she said through tears. Then Alexis directly challenged Fuchi from the stand with searing questions, saying, "Did she see you coming at her with the knife? Did she scream out for help, or was she paralyzed with agony? Did she cry for my mother?" Each question cut through the courtroom in silence. She demanded to know if Tristyn's final moments involved fear, pain, or betrayal by someone she thought was her friend. Now, it was this video that I saw on TikTok, and let me tell you, friends, it was hard to see. And if you really pictured in your mind, she had 114 heart-shaped stones that she dropped into a jar one by one. And it's not like it's 1 or 2, that's 114. Like, it took a while, and it really gives you the heart-wrenching realization that that is what Tristyn endured in the last moments of her life and just how many times she truly was stabbed. Now, other siblings spoke as well. Tristyn Bailey, Tristyn's brother, shared the unbearable guilt he'd felt, saying, "If I had slept on that couch, maybe Tristyn would be alive." He said this while his eyes were on Fuchi. Brittany Bailey Russell, Tristyn's eldest sister, flew in from out of state and angrily labeled Fuchi a coward, a ruthless, unremorseful villain. And their mother, Stacey Bailey, sobbed as she recounted her own regrets and fears. She explained that on the Friday before the murder, she had allowed Tristyn to sneak out to hang out with friends, a decision she now agonized over. "This night is where the weekend starts to crumble in hindsight," Stacey said. She pleaded with the judge. "Aiden Fuchi made a heinous decision and took the very life that I brought into this world." She implored the court not to consider rehabilitation for him, saying he is beyond saving. Each family member dropped a white stone into Alexis's jar at the end of their statement, symbolizing what Fuchi took from them: innocence, security, and joy. By the second day of hearings, Fuchi's defense called a psychologist, Dr. Stephen Bloomfield, to testify that Fuchi was remorseful and that adolescent brains can change. The state psychologist had testified the day before that Fuchi was callous and beyond rehabilitation. The two psychologists debated whether Fuchi's actions were truly premeditated. Assistant State Attorney Jennifer Dunton grilled Dr. Bloomfield about Fuchi's own statements. "Are you telling this court that saying all of those things and then doing exactly that weeks later is not a premeditated thought to commit murder?" she asked. Bloomfield admitted premeditation is a legal question for the judge, not psychiatrists. But the point had been made. Fuchi had signaled his intent beforehand. Finally, on March 24th, 2023, Judge R. Lee Smith delivered his sentence. He called the case probably the most difficult and shocking case that this county has dealt with, acknowledging the horror. Fucci, who was 16 at sentencing but only 14 at the time of the crime, was given life in prison. Judge Smith noted that under Florida law, Fucci would be eligible to have his sentence reviewed after 25 years, but otherwise there was no lighter sentence. He would likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. Additionally, Smith spoke directly to the Bailey family in court. He instructed them that their daughter would want them to find some peace. "Allow Bailey Sunday fun days to return to your home," he said, a reference to how the family used to celebrate Sundays. He thanked Tristyn's father for bearing the slow court process. He commended Tristyn's grandmother, who'd earlier apologized for her grandson, for her courage. That took a lot of courage, the judge said, noting it showed Fucci had been raised in a stable home. Judge Smith read a statement Fucci's grandmother had made. "Please don't take him out of our lives forever. I know there is some good in Aiden," she had tearfully told the court. The judge paused, then respectfully acknowledged it before sending Fucci away to prison. So, Aiden Fucci got life in prison. But because of his age at the time, Florida law bans any death sentence for a juvenile. However, like all juveniles, Fucci will automatically have a chance for a judicial review of his sentence after 25 years. But in the meantime, he will be behind bars with adults at the Cross City Correctional Facility. So I really think that he got the consequence that he deserved. I think it would be a serious misjustice if he was tried as a juvenile, because truly, what 14-year-old, I don't care if the brain is not fully developed, it doesn't really develop until you're like almost 30. So I don't think that's a good enough excuse to forego his actions, because it's really shocking that someone at 14 would even have those thoughts and let alone follow through with it. So I truly think that justice was served in the sense that he will not be roaming the streets and he won't get a lighter sentence just because of his age. Now, what's really interesting about this is because we had talked about earlier how Aiden's mom's actions the morning after the murder had taken place could be seen as her tampering with evidence. So she actually had to go through a separate hearing for herself, and that occurred on May 12th in 2023. And Aiden's mother, Crystal Smith, pleaded no contest to evidence tampering. The plea was part of a deal, though. Judge Smith, who was the same judge who sentenced her son, sentenced Crystal to 30 days in jail and 5 years probation. The court at that time had seen the video of her doing laundry after Tristyn's death, and prosecutors charged that by washing Fucci's bloody jeans, she was in fact tampering with evidence. Now, Crystal did not speak in court except to answer questions. Her attorney read a statement saying she didn't know initially what had happened, was frantic, and she apologized for any additional suffering her conduct caused to the Bailey family. Now, I'll leave that to you guys to be the judge of what you think about her actions on the morning after the murder, but I personally am happy that she had some negative repercussion for her actions because it doesn't seem innocent in my eyes. During this hearing, Tristyn's family, as represented by Stacy on the stand, her mother, made clear their pain. Tristyn's mother directly confronted Crystal, saying, "What I cannot understand is how you knew our child was missing. Your son was the last known person to see her, yet you saw something suspicious on his jeans and tried to wash it out," Stacy said. She wondered aloud if Crystal mourned the victim or only that her son got caught. Yet, Stacy also said she had hope from the words of Crystal's mother, Aiden's grandmother, that Aiden is a good person, hoping perhaps Crystal could use this time to change. The plea deal meant no trial for Crystal and saved the Baileys years of appeals. After hearing from all parties, the judge gave Crystal 1 day credit for time served and set that 30-day jail term. The family spokesperson later said that the Baileys had worked with prosecutors to reach the plea, feeling that it helped them take the next step forward in focusing on Tristyn's legacy instead of another prolonged trial. Now, it must have been hard for the family facing Aiden's mom after Aiden's trial, and it seemed to be intensely emotional, but Stacy Bailey later spoke of being relieved that this chapter was closed. She and the family shifted focus to Tristyn's memory. They established the Tristyn Bailey Memorial Foundation, which raises funds and awareness for children's causes. In May 2023, 2 years after the murder, the family marked the anniversary with a community event called Bailey's Strong Remembrance, a walk and cheer routine at Tristyn's old schools, emphasizing her life and spirit rather than just the tragedy. I am sorry, you guys. I'm getting a little bit emotional. I just think, one, it is really special that they continue to host events in Tristyn's memory, but I can't help but think how tough it would be to have to be put in a position to keep your daughter's memory alive. I think after having a child of my own, like I said this on our last episode, but after having a child of my own, it definitely hits a little different because you actually know what that relationship between a mother and their child is in a different way than being the child of a mother. And it's just hitting me a little bit hard that a 14-year-old boy took something so special from this family. And it's truly a sad case all around because 2 young children, really, like their lives are gone. And I don't say that out of sympathy for Aiden, but just out of the tragedy of 2 young lives not reaching their full potential. Now, one other concrete outcome of the case has been changes in law. The Bailey's family attorney, Matt Hinson, helped draft new legislation in Florida. In May 2023, Governor DeSantis signed Senate Bill 404, often dubbed Tristyn's Law, which now prohibits the release of crime scene photos, videos, or audio of a minor's killing. Previously, Florida's open records law required such materials to be made public. But after Tristyn's crime, there were fearsome requests online to see the brutal details. The new law makes those records confidential when a child is a victim, preventing another family's grief from being publicized by horrid websites, as Representative Charles Clemens put it. As Tristyn's family attorney said, this means in Florida, you're not going to get photos of the crime scene of a child that has been murdered. It was a way of creating a legacy, making sure something positive comes from this terrible event. So while nothing can undo what happened, her memory is helping others, which is ultimately what I think everyone wants when something horrific takes place and something so negative occurs in the world, that in its place something positive occurs in the world. I think there needs to be better balance in that way. I just think there's a lot of negativity that happens in the world and horrific things that occur. And I truly think that we all need to be a part of making the world a better place to live in. And I think the family helping draft new legislation and holding a community event to remember Tristyn are just a couple things that put positive outcomes in the world. So the Baileys continue to share Tristyn's story on their terms, focusing on her accomplishments, joy, and the love she brought to others. Their Memorial Foundation hosts annual events, including a golf tournament and cheer competitions, and they work to support young people in need. Stacey Bailey said it best. The family hoped people would remember Tristyn for her bright light, and that light indeed continues to shine. Throughout this case, from the community search for Tristyn on Mother's Day to the painstaking investigation to the emotional courtroom hearings, one fact remains clear. A family's world was shattered by an act of unimaginable violence. The legal system has delivered its verdict and sentence, but the questions linger for the rest of us. How do we protect children? What signs did we miss? How do we help families heal after such a loss? The Baileys' journey has no tidy ending. They lost their daughter after all. But through their courage and Tristyn's memory, they are finding a way forward. So it's important to remember the victims in these cases and the lessons learned. And in this case, Tristyn Bailey's name lives on in legislation, in community vigilance, and in the hearts of everyone who knew her. So thanks for listening. And just your weekly reminder to download our weekly episodes, follow us on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, and give us a follow on our social medias. You can find us at Luminol on the Wall. Can't wait till next week.